Can happiness be taught in schools and colleges? What do you think? Recently, on March 5th, Delhi University was in news. And the reason why Delhi University was in news was because of the course. Delhi University launched a course called Science of Happiness. Now, what caught my attention was the word happiness. Now, that raises a very big question. Can happiness be taught in schools? Can happiness be taught in colleges? Formally. Now, that's a question we'll be exploring today. And interestingly, March 20th happens to be World Happiness Day also. So it's all coming together. March 20th, you have World Happiness Day. March 5th, Delhi University rolls out this course, Science of Happiness. And interestingly, happiness courses are not something new in our country. For the first time in 2018, Delhi government experimented or initiated something called happiness curriculum. And as I talk to you right now, more than 1,000 schools in Delhi, state schools in Delhi, have happiness curriculum rolled out in the schools. And it's not only Delhi, even UP has it, UP schools have it, even Uttarakhand schools have it. Maharashtra has also launched their own happiness curriculum. So it's everywhere. But the larger question today we'll explore in this episode of Ethics and Current Events is this: can happiness be taught? Happiness curriculum in India evolved gradually. If you look at our educational history or history of education right after independence, we've had three educational policies: one in 1968, one in 1986, and the other one in 2020. 1968 and 1986 educational policies, they did mention something called social and emotional learning, but it was NEP or National Educational Policy of 2020 that stressed a lot on social and emotional learning of students. In fact, NEP 2020 stressed a lot on emotional aspect of learning. In fact, it states education must develop not only cognitive capacities, but also social, ethical, and emotional capacities and dispositions. Now, internationally also, there were some developments before 2020 that actually gave a direction towards happiness curriculum. In 2011, UN General Assembly adopted a resolution highlighting the importance of happiness and well-being in public policies. After 2011, 2014 was a landmark here in evolution of happiness curriculum. Why? Because in 2014, UNESCO launched something called Happy School Projects in Asia Pacific region. And the objective of this project was to prioritize happiness to be an integral part of learning. Look at the title, Happy School Project. So UNESCO was pushing for something called happiness becoming an integral part of curriculum. It was not only UN. Much before UN spoke about happiness and well-being, in the year 2002, positive psychologists started making their presence felt. And a lot of positive psychologists have started emphasizing on happiness and well-being. And it was from academics, slowly it went on to public policy circuits. So happiness curriculum emerged as a combination of positive psychology movement, which pushed for positive education, and along with that, UN also started pushing for it. So that's how it was a merger of academic plus policy. Now that we understood the background to happiness curriculum, how it evolved, let's get on to understand why. What's the purpose? Why? And as far as why is concerned, I can think of is all parents want the child to be happy. But surprisingly, in policy discussions, especially in education policy discussions, the word happiness is completely left out. We only talk about learning outcomes. We only talk about results. We never talk about happiness. We never talk about well-being in school curriculum. Are you a happy person? Interesting question, right? Oh, when was the last time you were happy? You need to think. And I have one more interesting question. Do you think Indians collectively are happy people? I have my doubts. Now, talking about Indians collectively being happy, if you look at World Happiness Reports, Indians are somewhere at the bottom. We don't make it the top. We're always there languishing somewhere at the bottom of it also. So it's time we also learn to be happy. So why not schools? Let's start with schools. Let's start by making our children understand how to be happy. So I guess that can be a second valid reason for happiness curriculum in schools. If you look at today's schools and colleges, there's so much of stress that floats around. There's so much of exam anxiety that builds up. There's so much of bullying that goes around. It's time we introduce something called happiness and well-being in our curriculum in schools and colleges as an antidote to all the stress and anxiety. Let's focus on building students who are emotionally stable, who are emotionally resilient. So no wonder we have to think in terms of introducing happiness curriculum in schools and colleges. There's another why I can think of is it's time we need a happiness curriculum in schools, because it's time we taught students how to experience happiness, not only in momentary, but also at a deeper level, also at a much more meaningful level. So I think that's where happiness curriculum will help students. If you ask me, the biggest motive for launching happiness curriculum in schools is this. It's to tell parents, it's to tell people not to push students towards results, not to chase results. Learning should be a happy experience, and learning should be a journey of self-awareness. So I think the purpose of happiness curriculum is this only. Before we get on to understand the content of happiness curriculum, before we get on to the question of can happiness be taught in schools and colleges, let's understand the conceptual framework of happiness curriculum. I'm not going to define what is happiness. I'm going to talk about what is the conceptual framework of happiness these curriculums are using. When it comes to conceptual framework for happiness curriculum, almost all the state schools follow the happiness curriculum framework created by Delhi government. And Delhi government uses Indian philosopher A. Nagaraj's concept of coexistence. And along with Indian philosophers' ideas, they also draw a bit from Western psychological theories of social and emotional learning. So it's a kind of a mixture of Indian philosophy and Indian tradition, along with a little bit of Western concepts of positive psychology. Indian philosopher A. Nagaraj defined happiness as a state of no conflict, synergy, or state of being in acceptance. Nagaraj's concept of happiness has three parts, three dimensions. Let's explore them one by one. The first one is momentary, second one is deeper, third one is sustainable. Let's start by understanding what is the momentary happiness Nagaraj talks about. The first level of happiness that Nagaraj talks about is momentary happiness. And this sort of happiness derived from senses. You eat good food, you listen to good music, sensory happiness. The next level of happiness that Nagaraj talks about is deeper happiness. And this happiness is derived from expressing feelings in relationships. The last level of happiness is sustainable happiness. And this happiness comes from self-awareness and learning. And Nagaraj's idea is this only, that a student should learn to shift from momentary to deeper and sustainable levels of happiness. Now that we've understood the evolution of happiness curriculum, we have understood the conceptual framework for happiness curriculum, let's understand the objectives of happiness curriculum. What is it that all the state governments want to achieve out of happiness curriculum? Self-awareness and mindfulness, that's the first one. Along with this, critical thinking and communication skills. And if you ask me, the most important one, empathy in relationships. That is expressing empathy in relationship. That's a key objective. And lastly, social awareness and human values. Now that we have understood the conceptual framework, the objectives of happiness curriculum, now I'm coming to a very key question. How to teach this curriculum? How to deliver this? Fine, I have the content, I have the conceptual framework. How to deliver? There are three components of delivery here. The first one is mindfulness. And here the children are encouraged to do mindful reading, not reading for memorizing facts, reading mindfully, paying attention to what they're experiencing when they read. For example, when you're reading poetry, mindfully experience the emotion behind that poetry. Or when you're reading a story, experiencing the emotion behind the story. It's about paying attention to the emotions you experience when you're reading something or when you're listening to something. So it all starts with that mindfulness where you pay attention to the emotion you are experiencing in a learning activity. It starts from there. After mindfulness, the next delivery component happens to be storytelling. When I say storytelling, this involves not inspirational stories alone. It also involves discussions after the story. And here the children are made to discuss, explore, and understand the message behind the story, understands the emotion behind the story. And the stories revolve around characters and situations which are relatable to them. So in other words, the story is very local. The story is very relatable to students. So that way the students get into the situation, try to understand what's happening, try to discuss it out. And the purpose of storytelling is to develop that emotional quotient. Third one, acting it out. Activity, expressing it. Now, a simple activity like having a gratitude wall in school, where children are encouraged to write gratitude messages, poems, or a slogan for the family members, for the friends, or the teachers, or whatever. A small activity of expressing gratitude helps kids. Similarly, as the kids grow up, we can have a wall of empathy, where the child can talk about empathy there, activities. So these are the three components of delivering happiness curriculum: mindfulness, storytelling, and activities. Now I have a question for you. Can happiness be taught in schools? What do you think? I'm sure you're thinking, just put yourself in a classroom. I'm sure all of us have experienced school and college. Just place yourself in your classroom, school classroom or college classroom, and think. Can somebody just think a teacher standing in front of you and delivering something called happiness lecture, where you're learning how to be happy? Is it possible? Yeah, college is fun. That is understandable. I remember this old Amir Khan movie called Rang De Basanti, where there was a song called Masti Ki Pathshala. College is fun. That's okay. You have fun. How about studying happiness? Is it possible? If you ask me, the answer to the question is yes also and no also. Yes, happiness can be taught. Yes, it can be taught. And when I say no, that means it cannot be taught in a manner as I teach you maths, or in a manner I teach you geography, or in a manner I teach you Hindi literature. It can be taught, it has to be taught a little differently. The first way I can make a student experience happiness in a classroom setting, this is something I've tried in classrooms a number of times, is make them experience positive emotions about their past. It's about making them look at the past with some gratitude for all the good things they have acquired in the past. Making them positive about their present. Making them positive about their future. That's the first thing a teacher can do. The schools also have a role to play. School per se, universities per se, college per se, have to create an atmosphere of happiness. Have to create an atmosphere of a place where a student feels safe, where a student feels their well-being is taken care of. Schools and colleges should not only be about academic needs, it's also about the students' emotional and well-being needs. Before we close, I leave you with a question. The question is, do you think students will take happiness curriculum seriously? Because in India, students are driven by results, placements, success. In fact, the dominant belief in India we have is success brings happiness. I'll leave you with a question. The question is, do you think success brings happiness, or happiness is the key to success? On this note, I also have a book recommendation. And the book is called Happiness Advantage by Sean Acker. Do read the book. You'll find your answers. Happy learning. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Ethics and Current Affairs. See you soon.